Yeah, I'm Arnold from PeeringDB, and is everyone still awake? Look at me, please. Yeah, okay. So, what is PeeringDB? So we already have heard a lot about peering, and Rebecca also talked about IXPDB, and basically PeeringDB comes more from an operational point of view, and within PeeringDB, basically we have all the information you need for interconnection or for peering. And these components are first the networks, the ASNs. So if we are talking about networks in the right context, basically you would more need or mean IP addresses, but if we talk about networks, mean autonomous system numbers. This is the first component, because interconnection always happens between networks. The second thing you need, of course, is somewhere the networks have to interconnect, and typically this happens within facilities. So this is the second component, what we have. And I have to go there? Okay, then I go there. I do not know for what reason. Because? For the webcast. Otherwise you don't see me. Okay, then I'm over here. So so interconnect, of course, within facilities, you can do it on a bilateral basis, but that does not really scale. If you want to interconnect with hundreds of networks and each of them have to interconnect with each other, this goes by n to the second power. So it's more efficient to interconnect via so-called internet exchange points, and this is basically then the third component which we store information about in PeeringDB. So this is our networks, autonomous system numbers, then we have facilities, and then the last component is internet exchange points. These are the basic records. Then we have also information of contact information, and basically what you also have then is derived information. For example, is which network is in which facility and which network is connected to which internet exchange, and also which internet exchange is in which facilities. And all this information is needed to maintain your peering. And why should you be in PeeringDB? Of course, you as a network, as an autonomous system number, you want to interconnect with other networks, so you would make your network known to all the other networks on all the information. What your peering policy is, where you are, what your RIR record is, where you are reachable, your NOC number, and so on, in which facilities you are, to which internet exchange point you are connected, and so on. As a facility, of course, this is more perhaps from marketing or sales perspective, is to show how many networks there are and to which networks you are able to connect to. And it's the same for internet exchange points. You find all the public information, the IP addresses of the peers. Also, especially the larger networks ASN, they require for you as a peer to have a PeeringDB record. And why is that? You can imagine networks like Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Hurricane Electric. They have hundreds of thousands of peering sessions to maintain. And they do not do it by hand, but they do it automatically. What they say, okay, we are willing to peer with you, but then you have to maintain a proper PeeringDB record, because we can then retrieve all the information from PeeringDB, and we can automatically set up the peering session. And this is, for example, what Microsoft does. It says, if you want to peer with us, there is a website. You have to type in the information. Then they pull the information from PeeringDB, and then they say it's okay. We find your ASN. We found the information on which IXP you are. We found also the contact information, and then it's going to the next step. So what I also did is, and this is something new, I did not yet do it before, I compiled information from PeeringDB about the C region. So in the first column, what we see is the number of IXs in the country. The second is the number of facilities or collocations in the country. The next one is the number of networks at the IX as a total. If there only is one, it's definitely the number of networks at this IX. But if you have more, then I just sum up, and I also already eliminated duplicates over here. This means there are a total of 69 networks connected to the 5 IXs which we have in Bulgaria. I did the same then for networks and facilities, and I already mentioned it now. That does not necessarily mean that all of the networks come from this country. This can also mean that they come from outside. For example, here for Bulgaria, there is a total of 96 networks. They might come from Bulgaria, but they might come from anywhere. The next column is the total of networks. And what you see is it's not like the sum of the networks at the IXs in the facility. It's clear. Why? Because not every network is at an IX, and also not every network necessarily is at a facility which is in this country. Why not? Because there is something like remote peering. Remote peering is that you connect into an internet exchange via a long line, via a long connection. That means you do not have a router in the IX or in any of the facilities where the IX is, but you come in with an Ethernet connection from somewhere else. You see? So this means this is the total of network. What is in the next column is, that means, for example, here for Bosnia and Herzegovina, I see 5 networks which are in PeeringDB and which come from this country. And what I also did is I retrieved information from the RIRs. They, on a daily basis, they publish information which ASN they registered or assigned to an organization in which country. And this is the last column. This means, I guess I did the calculation already a couple of days ago. There are a total of 47 ASN registered in this country. But this does not necessarily mean that all of them are peering. Maybe some are not yet operational, but this gives you an idea of the potential what could peer at an exchange, for example, locally. Ideally, if you apply for an ASN, you have to say, I need this ASN because I'm connected to at least two other networks, and therefore I need these AS numbers. And therefore, if you have an AS, then potentially you could also peer at an internet exchange, or, for example, over here, we have one facilities, but we have no network registered at this facility, which is a little bit strange. I do not know how it comes, would be interesting to look it up. So what we definitely see is we still have some countries. We know over here we will have an internet exchange very soon. In the Kosovo, we do not have one. In all the other countries, luckily, we already at least have one. We have other countries like Bulgaria, like Romania, and also Greek, where we have more than one internet exchanges. Generally spoken, you can say the bigger a country is, you typically find more internet exchanges. And even you might, for bigger cities, you at least should have one internet exchange, and it's also healthy for the interconnection between the networks, perhaps to have more than one. What I also find interesting is to see these numbers. For example, Romania, it has a lot of ASN registered, but only a few in PeeringDB. Is there another one? Yeah, it's the same in Bulgaria, where you have a lot of ASNs. You may ask, what are people doing with this ASN if they are not, for example, here in facilities or neither at internet exchange points? I guess it would be a topic for further investigations. Coming back to PeeringDB. So PeeringDB itself, it's already around since 15 years now. And roughly 4 or 5 years ago, people found out that PeeringDB really is crucial for operation of the interconnection industry, and therefore they say we have to really something, an organization behind it. And this led to the formation of PeeringDB as an association. And it's really easy to become a member of the association. You have to be a sort of corporation, limited liability company, partnership, or any other legal business. And you only have to subscribe to our governance mailing list, and then you are a member. You don't have to pay anything. And that, I guess, this is really great. It's easy to become a member, and as a member, you have a say. You can be voted on the board. You can vote. We have our next board election also. It already started. It already started on Monday. So we have also online board election. The election goes on for 2 weeks. We also have a general meeting. The general meeting is next week. If you have not yet registered, please do so. You can still elect. You cannot be elected, but you can still elect, and you should also attend our next general meeting. The board oversees the organization and sets the strategic direction and keeps the association healthy financially wise, but the day-to-day work actually is done by 4 committees. The first one is what we call admin committee, and this is what you within a company would call, this is our support department. Whenever you request a connect or a creation of a new object, you want to register a network, a facility, or a new exchange point, this creates a ticket for the admin committee. The admin committee then looks after the request, checks it, whether it's valid or not, makes sense, and if it makes sense, it's entered to the PeeringDB database. It also then answers generally questions. People might run into a bug or have a question what to do, and this is done by our admin committee. As our service or the website, the database, and everything behind it has to run on some infrastructure, we have the so-called operations committee. They look or take care of the infrastructure. Then the outreach committee, which more or less is our marketing department. I'm also working on the outreach committee. We prepare presentations, what we also did, for example, at the last apricot meeting. We had our first tutorial because we found out that it's needed to explain in more detail how PeeringDB works, what you can get out of PeeringDB. There is not only the nice graphical user interface, but what we also provide is for automation is an API. And the API is easy to use, but you definitely have to know how to use it. And this is something what the outreach committee is looking after. And last but not least is the product committee. The product committee, it looks after our product, after PeeringDB. We want to introduce new features. What we are using is GitHub. If you want or have something which you want to have implemented in PeeringDB, or if you run into a bug, you simply go to GitHub and then open an issue and say, oh, I want to have this, and then the product committee looks after your requests. I already mentioned it. Using PeeringDB, having a record over there, does cost you nothing. On the other hand, running the infrastructure, developing new features, this is not for free. This costs, and therefore we decided not to send out a bill to everyone who uses PeeringDB, because we want to encourage networks, we want to encourage also facilities and IXPs to enter the record in PeeringDB and to keep that up to date. And we do not have the manpower to send out hundreds and thousands of bills, and therefore we thought it's a good idea to refund this via sponsorships. And as I mentioned, the bigger networks also benefit a lot of PeeringDB because they can offload work. By saying you have to have a PeeringDB record, they do not need to compile the information, to retrieve the information manually, to look after each email, and this saves them a lot of money. And therefore, they are also willing to sponsor, and there are also other organizations who say, this is something good for the community, for the interconnection industry, and we are willing to sponsor. Sponsorship starts at $2,500 per year, which is a little bit more than $200 per month, and ends up to by $25,000. Luckily, we have enough sponsors. We are well funded. We are almost, what we try to set is that we have a reserve for 2 years, so that we are able to run PeeringDB not only today or tomorrow or next year, but also the year after next year. This is a list of our sponsors, and as you can see, the big organizations which really think that they are profiting from, they are sponsors, but we also have a lot of sponsors from smaller sponsorships, and I'm really happy to see that we have so many sponsors. So this is what I would like to talk about PeeringDB in general, and now I come to what we did in the last months. So the first is what you now see is a rebranding. We set up PeeringDB, especially the whole new database, the graphical user interface, roughly 3 years ago, and at that time we more concentrated it on that it is functional, but not that much that it's looking pretty good. So last year we decided, because we also have sponsors, we want to attract more sponsors, and it's like in real world, you have to look a little bit pretty. And therefore we did a rebranding. It's, I would say, nothing special, but I think it's looking good. We have a new logo, which also express, or should express, so this is this one. This is our new logo, which tells you the three components: the database, the interconnection, and also the user-maintained data. I guess I forgot about that. Most of the data is maintained by the users. So what we do not do is, like perhaps other databases, they try to collect information, for example, about collocation, and say, okay, there is the information and I have public access, but if you want to have deeper or more information, you have to pay for it. You have to have an account. This is not for PeeringDB. Everything is user maintained, and also you have to take care about that. So this is a rebranding. This is, we change the colors. As said, we have the new logo. Also, the, it changed a little bit. What we also already did last year is we made the whole PeeringDB code public open source. The reason behind this is also that the community is able to contribute, and also that you are able to look into the code and that you see there is nothing hidden in it, that it's secure, and that we are doing well. So the source code is also on GitHub. You're able to check it out, to contribute, and to add new features on your own already. As we have a lot of feature requests, we finally thought it's a good idea, or it's not already a good idea, it's a must, to have someone who is professionally looking after our features. And therefore, we decided to have a product manager. I'm happy to say that Felice, which is, I guess, well known in this community, joined us as our product manager on 1st of April. One of the 5 most important responsibilities is really to create a roadmap, to give you an idea what new features will come, and this will provide the output of the roadmap then to the outreach committee, which can then communicate it to the outside world. And also, what the product manager should do is to shepherd and streamline the discussion of the issues. We currently have, I would say, roughly 150 unresolved issues in GitHub. Then a discussion starts, it stops, we do not come to an end, and this is something which is not really productive. So what she also has to do is to shepherd this, make sure that we either drop this issue, perhaps also postpone, or say, okay, we want to implement it. If we decide to implement it, then she also has to manage the implementation. Currently, we have one company which does all the development for us. We are looking for other software developers as well to manage the implementation and also to roll out the new features. Then the other topic is to maintain the PeeringDB software release schedule. Typically what we try to do is to have new releases every 1 to 2 months to bring out new features as soon as possible. And last but not least, but it's also really important because our current documentation leaves room for improvement, so to say. So if you want to contact Felice, there is their email address, and hopefully at the next CE I will be able to tell more about it, what we do. Perhaps we already have then a roadmap. When we started PeeringDB on, this was completely in English. What we found out there, we had a good response from, for example, Brazilian networks, and they feel more comfortable if they have the software, if they have the user interfaces in their language. Luckily, the software already was developed that it was easy to implement internationalization. And we started with Portuguese as the first language, and now more or less we are able to have any language in PeeringDB. And it's, you already can go on PeeringDB, or either, if not directly on PeeringDB, then on better.peeringdb.com, which is our development site, and you are able already to see a list of languages which has at least partial translation in PeeringDB. So if you, for example, want also to support translation in a local language over here, which definitely is not yet in PeeringDB besides, I guess, Romanian, simply open an issue in GitHub, tell us which locale you want to support. We will then check out the strings into translate to peeringdb.com, and it's easy also to access it because you only have to have a PeeringDB account, and with a single sign-on to PeeringDB, you will also be able to have access to the translate server. Then you go to your preferences, say, okay, I want to help on this language, and then you are in the team for translating the PeeringDB software. How much is it? We roughly have 4,000 words to translate, and I guess it's about 700 strings. The really hard part, because I already helped on translating it to German, is some sentences are broken into 2 or more parts, and it starts, and you do not know what is in between or how it's ends. And especially in German, the end can make a complete different meaning. But I really would like if you would support it, have it in your language, and only if it's a good exercise to become more familiar with what PeeringDB is. So it's a list of the current translation, and I see from over here it's Greek and it's Romanian, which is in this C region, if I'm correctly. So if you want to, I do not know which language is spoken here, Serbian, perhaps, or whatever. What? I don't know. You have to tell me. So please do so. And also, Eric and Christian, where is the Romanian? I guess it's over here. You could make a little bit more progress. So. Okay, and that's it. Is a list of more information on PeeringDB. As said, this is for the moment, the most important one. This is governance. There is not much traffic on it. The announced list, this is for new releases. The technical list. So if it's more a discussion on which cannot be answered by the support, I always point the users, the community, to the technical list.